Franz von Kearney, Writings by Frank Schmidt, on the Danube Swabian people. These collected writings are republished in memory of the author, Frank Schmidt, so that others may continue to enjoy his work. May his spirit live on. The Saint of Bohemia. The German Ancestry of Saint John Nepomuk Neumann. English translation by Frank Schmidt of a German-language article by Raimund Palaczek, Dusseldorf, Bonn. On June 19, 1997, exactly 20 years had elapsed since John Nepomuk Neumann, the fourth Bishop of Philadelphia, who had immigrated to the United States from Bohemia in the early part of the 19th century, was canonized by Pope Paul V in Rome. On that day, June 19, 1977, an unpretentious mass was allowed to be celebrated in Prachatitz in Bohemia, the saint's birthplace, which was attended by a few dozen of the faithful under the watchful eyes of suspicious Communist Party functionaries. Would-be churchgoers from the West were barred from attending the Mass because of barriers hastily strung across access roads leading to Prachatitz. Besides, even though it was on a Sunday, the regime ordered an outing for all school children that intentionally took them out of town on the day of the ceremony. Nevertheless, the highest-ranking guest to attend was the American ambassador who had journeyed from Prague to take part in the ceremony. Through tried and proven totalitarian methods of disinformation, the communist regime led the local population to believe that because of its German ancestry, the recently canonized former Bishop of Philadelphia was a revanchist saint. 20 years later, in 1997, the city of Prachatitz made up for its lack of earlier recognition of its native son by sponsoring official ceremonies to honor the saint, this time with the participation of local and foreign dignitaries. At the very outset of the festivities in the middle of July, a book in the Czech language about Saint John Nepomuk Neumann and his native city of Prachatitz was published by author Václav Starý entitled Prachatitz. A.G. Neumann. Prachatitz, 1997, 232 pages. 132 pages. The author is a retired director of the county archives, where he worked from 1957 to 1995. The title of the book refers to its binary contents. In the first part, he outlines the history of Prachatitz from its founding in 1850, according to sources available to him during the decades of his tenure in the archives. Much of his essay runs concurrent with the life of Bishop Neumann. The second part consists of a summary of hitherto unpublished biographies of the saint's life, from which the author quotes liberally. Just as the city of Prachatitz sought to make amends 20 years after the canonization of Bishop Neumann, by staging an official ceremony, so did Václav Starý try to set the record straight for the life of the saint, and Prachatitz, his birthplace, closer to a Czech readership. The only biographies about the life of Bishop Neumann, hitherto published in the Sikh language, appeared in 1910 and 1940. Theirs were quite inadequate. Therefore, Stary's work is a long overdue dissertation from the Czech side. Prachatitz's latest significant monograph was written by a Czech chaplain in 1868, an example over 160 years ago, based on sources available to him. In the wake of a national revival at the time, he was not overly punctilious about the truth. In the first part of his historical hodgepodge, the writer describes the ethnic composition of Prachatitz as well as its socio-economic development between the 14th and 19th centuries, in a somewhat realistic and objective manner. However, he limits himself to brief portrayals of the life of the community, from which the reader learns that in the 14th century records were kept either in Latin or German, and that the majority of the councillors had German names. A decided change in ethnicity, and therefore the linguistic makeup of the city, took place after the Hussite Wars. Despite the claim of the former Chigate literati, the German part of the population was, according to Starý, in no way insignificant, nor worthy of neglect. He bases his assertion on the first census taken in the city in 1585. Readers familiar with the German biographies will learn nothing new about the work of the saint that is not already known to them, with the exception of the voluminous letters the saint wrote in his native Bohemian. In this regard, it must be emphasized that these facts have hitherto not been available to readers whose only language was Czech. However, there are new findings regarding the bishop's early days, and that of his family in Prachatitz. Here, the author succeeded in uncovering hagiographics that were published without any pretense of critique. In regard to the Neumann family, Starý established the following. Master stocking weaver Philipp Neumann, the father of the saint who hailed from Obernburg, Germany, did not come to the region in 1802, but much earlier. The first documented evidence of his presence in the region is dated January 8, 1800, the day he formally applied for civic citizenship in the village of Nadalitz. He did not, however, remain there for very long. Only 2 years later, on April 22, 1802, he appeared before the city council of Prachatitz on a similar matter in view of his upcoming marriage to Antonia Strachatiza, born June 8, 1770. 3 died April 26, 1804. The daughter of stonemason Thomas Stashadinsky of House Neyry. 5. The council granted him the civic citizenship he sought, and the wedding took place on May 10th. It is very likely that Philippe moved to Prachatitz a few months before he got married. However, he became a widower early in the marriage, and on June 17, 1805, he married Agnes Lebiche, born Dec, 12, 1770. 7th of house number 129, to Danar. 142. 7 children were born to the couple, not 8, as has often been stated. They were Katharina, born April 8th, 1806. She married Matthias Berger on June 12th, 1836, and died on June 14th, 1889. Philipp, born Feb. 1st, 1808. Deceased May 6th, 1808. Veronica, born Feb. 3rd, 1809. She married Anton Kroll on June 2nd, 1829, and died of cholera on June 25th, 1850. Johann Nepomuk, the saint. He was born on March 28th, 1811, not on Thursday, as he himself states in his autobiography, but on Thursday 3 days before Passion Sunday, 2 weeks before Good Friday. Johanna, born April 6th, 1813. From 1839 on, she was known as Sister M. Carolina Borromeus. Aloysia, born May 13th, 1815, deceased Aug. 27th, 1886. Wenzel, born Sept. 4th, 1817, deceased April 10, 1896, as Brother Wenzel sees S. in New Orleans. It has been established that the bishop's father did not immigrate to his native Obernburg for political reasons, even though the city was at that time, 1796 to 1801, a supply base for Napoleonic troops, but because of the custom in that age, which required apprentices to become journeymen in order to expand their knowledge of their chosen trade. This pretty well covers statements made about the Neumann family. This was reason enough for the author to expand his research into the ancestry of the saint, and more particularly, to throw some light into the darkness of his mother's ancestry. Until today, this was based on contradictory statements and superficial research into unreliable sources, insofar as this seriously took place, and turned up false or misleading entries in the church records of St. Jacob's in Prachatitz. In the Registry of Births, for instance, the following entry appears in 1777 under the name of the mother of the saint, Liebisch Agnes Sien Lepschi. On the other hand, in the baptismal record, Tom 111-305, one finds only Agnes' parents Georgius Liebisch Lararius et Sieves Proctit Uxos Uis Katharina, A.E. parents G.L. L. Sattler, citizen of Prachatitz, and his wife C. Why did the chaplain enter the false name of Lepschi after the real name in a register, which had been compiled at the end of the past century? This has invariably led to confusion. The Lepschi and Lepsi families have appeared in Prachatitz civic records since 1698. A family member named Gregorius Lipschi married in that city on February 3, 1770. 3. Marriage Roll 1, 227. The similarity of the Christian names Gregorius and Georgius have led to some confusion, because a fleeting perusal of the records may lead some readers to believe that they are one and the same names. On the other hand, the name Liebisch appears for the first time in 1764, when Agnes' brother Matthias, was baptized. Obviously, only one family named Liebisch was domiciled in Prachatitz, a name which was not mentioned again for at least 100 years after the registry was set up. But where did this Liebisch family come from? And who was the mother Katharina, whose name appears beside that of her daughter, Agnes, on a cross in Old Prachatitz that was re-erected at the gravesite of the Neumann family? The most important reference in the register is the entry of the wedding of Agnes's parents, which admittedly cannot be found under the names of Liebisch or Lepschi. On the 22nd of November 1, Joannes Georgius Levitch married Katharina, the daughter of Prachatitz citizen Martin Ziefrund. An excerpt from the record states the following, in Latin: Joannes Georgius Levitch Carrarium et Siebenmann Austriacum ex Oppido Sarliensbach. In Austria superiorios cum Katharina filia legitima post defunctione Martinium Sieverendel Sivem Prachatensum. Chaplain Simon Hoder. Wedding Roll 159. Any remaining doubts about the family name were cleared up when the names of the couple's children were entered on the baptismal roll. In each case, the parents were listed as George Liebisch et Katharina Uxor. The children's names and birth dates are listed as Matthias, born September 19th, 1764. Maria Magdalena, born July 7th, 1767. Bernard, born August 18th, 1769, and baptized on August 19th, 1769, and died on Oct. 8th, 1775. Elizabetha, born Nov. 4th, 1775. In baptismal records, her name has been misspelt Klebisch. On Jean 7th, 1807, she married Anton Migo. Agnes, born Deck. 12th, 1777. Joseph the youngest was baptized in March 1780. The father's name is listed as posthumous in the death register, IA 138, because he died on Deck. 30th, 1779, at the age of 48, just 10 weeks before Joseph's birth. Joseph died on Feb. 20th, 1785. Thus, the mother of the bishop was already fatherless at age 2. It is quite clear that according to a marriage entry in the year 1763, that the sainted bishop's grandmother hailed from the Upper Austrian town of Saarlenbach. Johann Georg, the son of Anton Labiche, whose spouse's name was Katharina, was born on March 30, 1731, in the nearby town of Platt, in the vicinity of Zellendorf, where his father owned a vineyard. The Labiche family were longtime farmers in the region. Their presence is verified in the Zellendorf records dating to 1640, the year record-keeping was introduced. Families named Labiche still live there today. Catherine Scheiker's father Daniel was a miller in the parish of Offenhausen, near Wels, Upper Austria, where Katharina was born on April 16, 1703. She married Anton Labiche in Saarlenbach in 1725. The great-grandfather of Bishop Neumann died on June 28, 1733, at the age of 32 in Saarlenbach. The young widow married Prachatitz citizen Andreas Langer on January 26, 1735, and died in Saarlenbach on June 5, 1779, at a very advanced at the time. Through his stepfather, Langer Georg Labiche established decisive contact with Prachatitz. He settled there in the early 1760s. In the nuptial register, he is listed as Austrian civem Austriacum because he does not yet possess Prachatitz's civic rights. There, he acquired it through his marriage to the daughter of a Prachatitz citizen. The grandmother of the Saint Katharina Ziefriend, as noted in baptismal record I-404, was born on November 23, 1740. She is the third of 5 children of Martin Ziefriend and wife Barbara. All were born in Prachatitz, and their family names were alternately recorded as Ziefrundel or Ziefrund. They are Joseph, baptized on March 17, 1730, 5 Maria July, 30th, 1730, 1736, Katharina A.S., Teresa Nov, 14th, 1740. The author did not write anything more about the fate of the Ziefrund family, and apparently believes that descendants of the Ziefrund family may still be living in Prachatitz. Not very likely if they classed themselves as Germans, because they would have suffered the fate of the 3.5 million other Sudeten Germans, who were cruelly expelled from their hereditary Bohemian and Moravian homelands in the aftermath of YW, with the connivance of the Allied powers and the Une. Transl. Note: Martin Ziefrund, the great-grandfather of the saint, also acquired his Prachatitz civic citizenship through marriage. He hailed from Kalsching in the Bohemian for Saint. His wife's maiden name was Salzer. The marriage record dated November 17, 1733 states: Martin Polentarium, Malt Miller, Prachattensis is Apodo Schwalzen, Kalsching, Mathilium Post, Def, Matthias Giesefriend cum Barbara Solzer. Again, it is obvious that German names often enter the record according to Czech phonetics. This is because most of the chaplains were Czechs and entered unfamiliar German names, according to Czech spelling. According to the death register, IVI, Martin Ziefrand died in Prachatitz on March 26, 1763, at age 62. His birthday and data about his parents could not be determined. By the time of his marriage in 1733, the father was already deceased. Further research could not be undertaken because the Kalsching records dating from 1668 to 1784 were destroyed in a fire on Feb. 4th, 1808. The rectory and 65 houses went up in flames in the great conflagration of this market town. After 1710, baptismal records, and after 1749 marriage records, too, were restored on the basis of various documents. However, complete records are only available after 1784. With the aid of surviving land title and tax records, it was possible to trace the name Zeinfendel with its variants Ziefriendel, Ziefrendel, Ziefrendel, Ziefriend, etc., to the end of the 16th century. Martin's father, Matthias, who was born around 1668, was obviously not a Ziefriend at birth, but was the son of Nicholas Winkler. When he died in 1687, Lorenz Ziefrand inherited the neglected farmstead. Before Lorenz died at the beginning of the year, he adopted his wife's children. After the adoption, Matthias took the name of Ziefriendel in order to inherit property in the lower section of Kalsching, which he sold 7 years later. The great-grandfather of the saint was born on this farmstead. Prachatitz's great-grandmother of Bishop Neumann, Barbara Ziefrundel, died on September 5, 1770, at age 63. The author was unable to find her name in the records either under Sulzer, Salzer, or Salzer. Her birth could have taken place on December 17, 07, Patrozinium of St. Barbara, because her parents had married in Prachatitz on March 8, 1707. On this day, the following entry was made in the nuptial record: BD 0178. Bartholomeus Sulzer, Honestus Juvenus ex Apido Wallern cum Clara Vidua, Post F. Matthias Mertzinger ex Prachat. It seems that the great-great-grandfather of the saint also acquired Prachatitz civil rights through marriage. Bartholomeus Sulzer was born around 1682 in Wallern. Because he had not yet reached his 30th birthday, he was listed as Honestus Inventus. Young man. Bartholomeus married the widow Clara Mertzinger. The name of the father of the bridegroom was not given, nor could the author find a copy of the marriage certificate. In regard to ancestors of Agnes, the bishop's grandmother, one may summarily state that 1/2, Libischacher, and therefore 1/4 of the bishop's ancestors hailed from Upper and Lower Austria, and the other half, Zifferensalzer came from the nearby Bohemian forest towns of Kalsching and Wallern. Just how far back Agnes Neumann's great-grandmother Clara Salzer, the widow Mertzinger, goes back in Prachatitz, or whether she may have had Czech ancestors, is unclear. However, it is a well-known fact that the saint's maternal ancestors came from a German-speaking environment. A short comment in regard to saints belonging to a certain ethnic group. During their lifetime, saints should strive to be mediators among men. Therefore, Bishop Neumann should be looked upon as the saint of the people of Prachatitz of the Germans, as of the Czechs a saint of the Bohemian forest, and the saint of the Franks, as well as the Americans. Therefore, no nation should claim that he is our saint. Such an attitude would not please the little bishop, as his Philadelphia parishioners were wont to call him because of his slight 157 m. 5'112" n. stature. New facts have come to light concerning the ancestors of the bishop's father, Philipp Neumann. The reason for the father leaving his native city was either to become a journeyman or because of the political situation in French-occupied Obernburg from 1796 to 1801 and the massive forced recruitment of local men for the French army. The submission of the hypotheses that Philipp Neumann escaped from the recruiters stems from a report by Becker, the city clerk of Obernburg, who stated that Johannes Philipp Neumann was a witness to the bombardment of Obernburg by French artillery. According to the city clerk's report, the local priest father got together with some older and younger citizens of Obernburg, took refuge in a forest on the far side of the main river. 2 days later, 3 young men were sent out as scouts to ascertain the situation in the city. Unfortunately, they were tracked down by French chasseurs, and one of them was stabbed to death. 3 scouts were named in the report. One of them was Johannes Philipp Neumann, the father of the saint. In his report, Becker, a city clerk from Obernburg, apparently mistook Philipp Neumann for his brother Johann, who was 3 years younger. The city's archives include a collection of petitions pertaining to requests for military discharges and waivers of military service, respectively, between 1796 and 1813. Petition Ngenjur 10, dated January 31st, 1797, refers to Philipp's 19-year-old brother Johann Neumann, who requested that the city council grant him freedom from military service on the grounds that his brother was already abroad, and he, Johann, had heard nothing from him for 3 years. It was very likely that he had been drafted into the Austrian, Imperial and Royal military service. This brother is definitely Philipp Neumann, who probably left his native city in 1793, or at least in the spring of 1794, and according to the last letter the family received from him in 1790. 596 had settled in the hereditary lands of the Emperor of Germany and King of Bohemia and Hungary Franz II, probably in Bohemia. It has been authenticated that the father of the saint, the 19-year-old journeyman stocking weaver, struck out for Bohemia political events on the west side of the Rhine, may have been a prime factor for him to head in an easterly direction. In January 1800, Philipp Neumann's presence on Bohemian soil was recorded. The male ancestors of Philipp Neumann came from the Lower Rhine region or Brabant. After the end of the 30 Years' War in 1648, at the express invitation of the Elector of Mainz, Catholic families from war-ravaged areas were resettled in the partly depopulated lands south of Aschaffenburg. Obviously, one of the families was the Neumanns. An entry in the civic record of Kleinwallstadt, a neighboring community in Obernburg, states that a daughter named Anna Walburga was born to Hans Heinrich, Johann Heinrich, Johann and Heinrich Neumann and his spouse Anna Maria. Over the course of the next 18 years, 4 sons and 3 daughters were born to the couple. The birth certificate of one of the sons, Johann Franz, born August 20th, 1660, may still be seen in the archives of the city of Mainz. From this certificate, it is evident that his father, Johann Heinrich Neumann, was a butcher in Kleinwallstadt, as was his father, Johann Conrad Neumann. Johann Conrad is the oldest provable Neumann ancestor. He was Fork's great-grandfather of the saintly bishop and was born around 1595. This certificate also states that Maria, the mother of Johann Franz Neumann, was the daughter of Johann Hoffmann. He and his brothers became purveyors of wine and fodder for the Elector of Mainz, and after 1628, acquired such renown that the Imperial Court Council of Emperor Ferdinand I in Vienna granted his request and awarded him a civic coat of arms. Johann Hoffmann, also Fork's great-grandfather of Bishop Neumann, was named mayor of the town of Kleinwallstadt on Sept. 10th, 1638. He held the office until his death in December 1670 at age 70. Johann Hoffmann probably hailed from Grossestheim, Hessen, where his marriage on February 5, 1630 was recorded. With his marriage to 20-year-old Anna Maria in 1652, the son of a butcher Johann Heinrich entered into a very advantageous union in his new hometown. With the birth of his son Johann on July 10, 1669, he established the Obernburg branch of the Neumann family. Here in the year 1695, he married the 20-year-old daughter of an Obernburg citizen, acquired civil rights in the city, and was allowed to establish himself as a cooper. As a citizen of Obernburg, he soon acquired great respect, and around 1710, he was named the senator, councillor of Obernburg and became mayor 1731. Johann's son Adam, born Feb. 12, 1699, was the third of 9 children. The two younger sisters joined the Cistercian order of nuns at the convent of Engeltal near Altenstadt in Friedberg County, Hessen. In 1742, the older one became the priories of the order. On the 15th of February, 1724, he married his second cousin Elizabeth Hoffmann in Kleinwalstadt. Adam's grandmother was the younger sister of the grandfather's bride, the Cooper Johann Hoffmann, 1630-1683. Of the 12 children in this marriage, the sixth Philipp was born on October 15th, 1735, who was the grandfather of the saint. He learned his trade as a baker in 1754 to 1755 and took part in the 7 Years' War in service of the Elector of Mainz. In 1765, he was accepted into the Bakers' Guild as master baker. After his return from the war, Philipp Neumann married Margrethe Jacob. She was born on Feb. 7th, 1738. She was the seventh of the 9 children of the sailor on inland waterways, Matthäus Jacob from Kleinwalstadt and Anna Maria Deckelmann of Obernburg. According to the marriage record, Matric 111-110, the priest apparently mistook the bride for his sister Elizabeth. By Nov. 2nd, 1730. The father of the Saint Philipp Jr. was the sixth child of Philipp Esser and Margrethe Neumann, Johann Borndeck, 30th, 1763, who died shortly after his birth. Maria Elizabeth born Jane 30th, 1765, Maria Katharina born Sept. 12th, 1767, Julianne born July 12th, 1769, died 4 months later. Maria Anna born Oct. 13th, 1771. Joe Philip born Oct. 16th, 1774. Johann July 13th, 77. In 3 generations, the Neumann family expanded greatly in Obernburg. In the years 1755 to 1825, there were no less than 47 baptisms of children named Neumann. Johann died on Nov. 27th, 1840. In volume in the parish of Obernburg, on pages 131, 132, there is an obituary regarding the death of Bishop Neumann in 1860. From statements attributed to Bishop Neumann's sister, Johanna Katharina, it is evident that contacts between the Prachatitz and Obernburg branches of the Neumann families were not too close. Perhaps that is why Father Karl's letter to the bishop's brother Wenzel, who had joined the Redemptorist order in Flatbush, New York, was held up by the bishop's uncle Johann and spinster Aunt Anna in Obernburg before it was sent on via Strasbourg and Paris. The ancestors of the sainted Bishop Neumann stem mainly from the working class and were marked by the bourgeoisie of market centers of Obernburg, Wallern, Kalsching, and Prachatitz. The Labisch lineage in Lower Austria had rural roots. With regard to the language, the saints' ancestors belonged primarily to South German dialect groups, which in their main Frankish Bavarian, South Bohemian, and Lower Austrian form of speech represent the diverse mentalities. Lastly, we point again to the older Neumann ancestors who came from the Low German-speaking area. All of them had deep roots in the Catholic region in whose spirit the saint grew up and whose moral fiber shaped his life. This article originally appeared in the periodical Faith and Homeland in Bielengries, Germany, the saint not only from the Bohemian forest. As we conclude this enlightening video, we've uncovered a fascinating chapter in the life of Saint John Nepomuk Neumann, shedding light on his German ancestry and the profound impact it had on his journey to becoming the 4th Bishop of Philadelphia. Here are the key takeaways from this exploration. Saint John Nepomuk Neumann's story is one of migration, heritage, and devotion. Immigrating from Bohemia to the United States in the 19th century, Neumann's German ancestry played a pivotal role in shaping his path to sainthood. His canonization by Pope Paul V in 1977 was a testament to his remarkable life and dedication to his faith. Now, here's a question to ponder. How did Saint John Nepomuk Neumann's diverse family background, encompassing various regions and cultural influences, contribute to his legacy as a significant figure in Catholic history? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts on the content we've explored. Please share your insights in the comments below. If you found this episode engaging and thought-provoking, a simple gesture like hitting the like button would mean a lot. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, consider doing so to stay connected with more captivating stories like this. And remember, sharing this episode with your friends, families, and clubs can make a significant impact in spreading awareness about the history of the Danube Swabians. Before we part ways, I'd like to extend an invitation. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to dive into more stories from this channel. Each story is a window into the rich tapestry of history that continues to shape our understanding of the world. Until next time, let's continue celebrating the legacy and heritage of the Danube Swabians.
Wir sind Donauschwaben, Kinderskinder.